What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Made You a Mixtape podcast. I'm your host, Jason. I'm going to put out a blanket apology right now because my guest this week is none other than Leo Gray. And if you know Leo, you know the blanket apology is definitely needed. Leo, how are you doing?
Right. How's it going, man?
It goes good. It goes good. So now, anyone who's been in the GTA music scene knows that Leo Gray has, played in a number of different bands. He's also a member of the Rent a Stage team. So let's start with Rent a Stage. Kind of tell us what Rent a Stage is, what it does, how you guys got it started, and how you guys are handling this past year.
All right. So that's a lot. Okay, so how it started, as a working musician, I have played many festivals, outdoor festivals, especially in the summer, is your bread and butter. And, you play on these stages. And being a teacher as well, like a music teacher, I was mentoring a kid band. So we're talking like, I think they were like 10 to 12 years old, the kids in this band. And occasionally some of the festivals I play, I get the kids to open for us. So it was a great experience for them because I never got that opportunity at that age. So it was like a pipe dream to be able to play a big stage, like with full production and stuff, like unheard of. Most cover bands don't get to have that sort of opportunity. So
I was about to say.
Yeah, exactly. Right? So it was like, and to get the kids to open for us. And the father of one of the kids, him and I were talking, and he said, he turned to me one day and said, "What do one of these stages cost?" And I went, "I don't know. Like, I'm worried about the price of my guitar strings. I don't know what a stage costs. Like that's an insane question. Who knows?" So, we started looking into it, and we found the premier stage maker, which is a company called Stage Line. They're based out of Montreal. Funny enough, and they build basically the best stage that the world sees and ships them all over the world. So we looked into their smallest one, we bought it, and went for training in Montreal for a couple days, and then brought it home, and we're like, oh, maybe we'll do some backyard parties and rent it out, and came up with a quirky name of Rent a Stage because it's the first thing that will show up in a Google hit. Like we really didn't think anything further than, we'll rent out the stage and see if we can kind of make our money back. And all of a sudden, because of the connections I had in the industry from playing a bunch of these festivals, we started taking on production as well. So we started doing backline, like the drums and amps and all that stuff. And then the actual production part with the PA and mics and monitors and all the cabling and then lighting. And next thing you know, we're a full production outfit with this one stage. In the last 6 years, we've grown it to 6 stages, which is awesome. And then, we were actually on a great roll, and then COVID hit. And, the music industry was like the first thing shut down, will probably be the last thing to reopen. So we really tried hard to prep for COVID as much as you couldn't prep for it. We heard in the, behind the scenes, like a couple months before it actually got shut down, that it was going to be bad. We thought maybe a couple months, maybe the summer at best. So we went to great strides to limit the amount of bleeding we would do as a business. And we've basically just been holding on since then, because there's no outdoor anything happening right now as far as festivals are concerned. So that's sort of how we got started, and then where we're at now, where we're still in hibernation mode, but we have been prepping for a reopening. And we're going to hit the ground running. We've got a ton of stuff already lined up for the summer. For the second the scientists say, hey, this is okay to do, we will be there. So that's where we're at.
And you have to think, as vaccines are starting to get into the arms of people, and we can start to actually, walk towards, I've said it unfortunately a million times, new normal. Outdoor shows are probably going to be the first ones approved, because it's going to be a while before you have to think that venues are welcoming full houses inside. Do you think that outdoor shows are going to be the way to go this summer, at least here in Canada?
Yeah, it's going, like you just said, that's going to be the way. They're not going to trust the indoor thing at all. I have a feeling the second they get to a point of herd immunity, the government, because I know for a fact they've done this, they've been pushing the grants for all these festivals still. So it's not like the money hasn't been allocated. It's still going to these promoters, and these promoters are still kind of going, this is going to happen. And it might happen this year on a daily basis rather than on a weekend basis, only to maximize the amount of festival time we get here in Ontario, for instance, right? So, I mean, I usually push out stages till about the end of October, and then it kind of dies out for the winter. But you know, I'm thinking from August on, it's going to be mayhem, and it's going to be just, it's going to be small shows, but lots of them. I did one last year in Bradford, and it was like maybe 25 people in their own designated circles out in this parking lot. It was very odd, and it might be that same sort of thing where they cordon off sections or whatever, but they're going to push it. It's going to happen. As long as the needles get into arms, and you know, the numbers start to decrease as far as you know, people getting sick. So
now I remember you had posted a picture from, I guess it was from that show, and you know, you had played in one of the bands that was playing at the time, and yeah, there were plexiglass walls all around.
Yeah.
You were literally in the Ron Burgundy glass case of emotion.
Yes, I was.
How long do you think that's going to be? And as someone who has performed in that kind of situation, how weird is it? Because I know, like, you're someone who likes to run around the stage and run around the crowd, and then all of a sudden you're like, no, you stay right here and you don't move anywhere else.
Yeah, it's weird, the human interaction with musicians and that unspoken thing that we do on stage. When you also put a piece of plexiglass in front of it, it's very daunting. The first thing I noticed from that show was that all I could see was my reflection in the glass because of the lighting on the stage. So I couldn't see anybody beyond that plexiglass, and I was really just seeing a reflection of myself. So it felt very narcissistic to kind of be playing and posing like I do in my show to me. You know, it was very, very weird. And anytime you wanted to go and like rock out with your fellow musician, you kind of couldn't. It was an odd way to perform, very limiting. But again, having not performed for so many months, it was just nice to play. Right. So, yeah, a different atmosphere. I don't know what's going to happen with the plexiglass scenario once we get back into normal things. I don't know if that's going to be a long-lived thing, but it might be. I'm finding what they're doing now is that they're asking for my bigger stages so that they can space the players out more, but not do the plexiglass thing. And they'll put just more depth between the crowd and the, you know, because they're saying it's a 6-foot thing. Then as long as you're technically 6 feet away from the singers, it should be fine. You know, give them 10 feet if you're really worried about projectile spit from singers, you know. But I mean, that should be fine. But again, I'm not a doctor, and I'll do whatever the scientists tell us we need to do. So,
well, as long as you're not, you know, hardcore logoing up and spitting at everybody, I think you'll be fine.
No more sharing my Jaeger with anybody. I'll just drink it all to myself.
That's good and dangerous both at the same time, and I approve. Now, when you're doing these shows in normal times, you're not just the one who's like, you know, wheeling the stage and setting it up. You're usually the one who's also doing the sound mix. And as someone who's played a number of those shows, how important was that experience in providing a sound mix for a band up there?
Yeah, it's a weird concept. I never fancied myself a sound guy at all. And, you know, like in a lot of cover bands, somebody in the band ends up getting designated that role because somebody has to do it, right? Most cover bands, or most bands in general, will play somewhere where there is no PA system, let alone a sound guy. It's not, right? The idea of a venue is kind of fleeting in a lot of places. So you kind of learn that you have to do it on your own. And, you know, from playing for so many years in different cover bands and setting up my own PAs for those bands, you know, you get kind of acquainted with the gear and how it works. And when we started Rent a Stage, it was kind of the exact same thing with just bigger gear, you know? So I was like, okay, so I'm doing this, but bigger. Where I find it daunting is when I'm doing a show with like a massive PA system that would fill Woodbine Park in Toronto, and I'm mixing it from the stage while I'm playing guitar, and I'm running out into the crowd, not so much for showboating, but more so I can hear and make sure that it's sounding good to them, and then I run back on stage and can keep playing, right? So the multitasking I do on a show like that, it stresses me out, but also gives me goosebumps at the exact same time because I really enjoy it. I don't get to do that from a drum position, unfortunately, and it's a good thing I only play drums in one band because, you know, I can't really run out and and listen while holding a beat. But
just carry the snare drum, you'll be fine.
yeah, so I kind of guesstimate on where levels should be, and I tend to hopefully have somebody in the crowd who will give me a thumbs up or down depending on what needs to go up or down as far as volume is concerned. So but yeah, it's a guessing game, and it's fun, and it's a neat, I guess, skill set to have, because not everyone can do that, right? It's not in everyone's wheelhouse to be able to multitask like that and still remember where you are in the song and what harmonies to sing and what's the guitar solo coming up next. So
now, obviously, to get to that point, you've had to, study a lot of gear and, I mean, aside from play a lot of shows, basically know how everything works. So how did that, transition from, okay, I'm a guitarist to, okay, I'm kind of like the everything guy and I know how to do this because I've done it so many times?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. What's that saying? Necessity is the birth of invention or something, whatever. I'm not smart enough.
Necessity is the mother of all invention.
That's it, right? So because I had to, I just did. Yeah, it was one of those things where I would see something on somebody else's show and go, cool, I see how that works. And funny enough, when I got started into doing sound, it wasn't really on an analog board with like actual faders that you would push. I started with digital technology that was just opening up. And I went and bought a digital board and literally went home, and the company that built the digital board that I bought had these amazing YouTube tutorials. It was like 26 chapters of like YouTube tutorials on what every function of their digital board did. And I just dived into those tutorials, kind of learned that board and only that board, and then went, oh, cool. So the bigger boards just do that, but more of it. So I got used to that. If somebody actually gave me an old analog console with like tons of rack gear beside me that would control all the effects and stuff, I would have no idea what to do, only because I've never had to do that. And what's happening in the industry is that no one's really using that old analog gear anymore. Everything's going digital because it's smaller format, easier to work with, and it sounds crisp and clear, and you can save things. So if you've done sound in a room, for instance, and it was good, you can save it and just recall it the next time you play there, and everything will be exactly as it was. So, there's a lot of pluses and not so many minuses. So yeah, that's sort of how it was. It was a trial by error and kind of going, okay, I have this piece of gear, what can it do? And just figuring it out.
Now, you mentioned that you would go to shows and kind of say, oh, that's cool and whatnot. Do you find now, because I know you still like to go out to shows, like the big concerts and whatnot. Do you find that now when you're, seeing those shows, as someone who does staging and lighting and sound, do you find it almost harder now to sit there and just enjoy the show? Or do you find yourself picking apart certain parts of the production?
You can't help it. Yeah. The last show I went to see, the wife and I went to Marilyn Manson with Rob Zombie, and our seats, funny enough, were right next to the sound guy. Like I was literally right next to his sound area, and she's like, "Oh, it's going to be terrible here." I said, "No, this is the best seat in the house because he's mixing it from where he's standing, and he'll make it sound good from where he is." And this was at the Molson Amphitheater, right? So like you're talking a big shell, and then the big outer, section, and my ear is instantly picking up what he's doing. Like I could hear, certain bass frequencies he was trying to, encapsulate, and then, the highs and lows and how it bounces, and he's trying to control that. Yeah, my first thing was to nerd out and literally dissect what he was doing, and then I realized I was missing the show. So I put my musician lover hat on and went, let's just enjoy music. But yeah, it's hard. I will often change hats depending on what I'm doing, go, nerd out on the gear, nerd out on the musicians. And sometimes that's what happens. I mean, you're in the tech world as well. You doesn't matter what you watch, you're ripping it apart on some level, right?
Mm-hmm. Now, through the pandemic, recently, you've started to post pictures of your guitar arsenal. and how each guitar has kind of played a role in your music career. How many freaking guitars do you have? And when you're getting a guitar, like what is it that you look for?
Yeah, that's all right. Number wise, I think when I was displaying that stuff on Instagram, I hit 28, and then that was it. And I had gone ridden a few, so I was down to 28, which is sad and pathetic yet awesome at the same time. Um, yeah, no, I mean, my guitar collection has varied over the years, and I think like most musicians, we all have gas. We all have that gear acquisition syndrome. So it's just I've done so many styles of music that it was like I needed a guitar to suit what I was doing. And there were certain projects I was in where it made sense to acquire that guitar, at least in my brain, or at least that's how I justified it. So like I've gone from playing metal to playing country to playing pop to playing R&B, to some, just a variety of stuff. So, I'm not going to show up to a country gig with a flying V because that's just not going to work. So
although fascinating.
Although very fascinating, like, so I have like probably, I would like to say probably 6 or 7 guitars that I consider my live guitars. And they span pretty much all the styles that I might have to cover in a given situation with whatever band I'm hired to play for. And they work for those situations. I also have a bunch of guitars that are what I call my studio guitars, which are strictly for recording. I don't take them on the road. They're too delicate or too nice or whatever, or too pricey, and I just wouldn't do that. And then I have gimmick guitars, which, was the funny part of that Instagram thing. I have like just stupid guitars that look dumb, and, I love them because they're just dumb looking guitars, and I put more money into them than the guitar deserved. But I would play them on like Halloween gigs, right? So like I have a guitar that's looks like a machine gun, and another one looks like a snake, and so it's like, yeah, I'm gonna take that out on a Halloween gig or some apropos gig that it makes sense for that, and is part of my shtick. I've always fancied myself a performer over being a musician. I like to perform, and so my gear is often a reflection of my personality when I perform. So
let's get to performing, because you have played in countless bands. I'm not even going to sit here and list them because I would basically run out of bands. But it's not that you're always a part of the band. It's that a lot of times you're called in to step in, and do like a one-off with one of those bands. How tough is that when someone calls you up and says, "We need a guitarist like 2 weeks from now. Any chance you come out? By the way, here's the 80 songs in the set list."
Yeah. It's not something I ever really signed up for. It just kind of, it feels like it just happened. It was more of a, I love to play. And there was a time when I exclusively only played gigs. So because of that, the necessity to play with a variety of people became necessary for me to make money. Right? So it was like, if I was playing 7 days a week, it was not with the same band. It was like with 7 different bands. When you start doing something like that, not only does your reputation start to get around, but it's more of a, if you're good at it, people will refer you, right? So my name would get like thrown to somebody, and somebody would call me and be like, "Yeah, I hear you play guitar, blah blah blah." Or if the guitar player for the band that in question was needing a break or had another gig or double booked themselves, they would call me and just be like, "Can you show up at this bar and play with this band?" And I'd be like, "Sure," and I get the set list. And 9 times out of 10, I knew most of the stuff on the set list. There's always some songs I've never played or whatever, but especially when it comes to the rock stuff, I pride myself on being fairly up on it. And the pop stuff, I know my share of Spice Girls and whatnot. So it's like, I don't know why I know this stuff, but it's in my hands and I do know it, and I can roll with the punches fairly easily. It's just a unique skill set I've had since grade 6. And I remember being in class in grade 6, figuring out songs by ear very quickly. And I still can do that. I can break down songs pretty quickly. So like for you to say 2 weeks, that's a lot of time for me. I've been given less than 24 hours before to learn 45 songs. And I've done it, I don't know why I did it, but I did do it. So
it's a Friday. I'm bored. It's nothing on TV.
I do enjoy the challenge. I show to my students, like, if you can do that, then you'll probably always have work, right? You'll always get some work, because if you're the guy who bails out a band who's stuck at a bar, then they'll remember that. We're all a big community of musicians, and we all have to lean on each other. It's hard enough to be in a relationship with one person, let alone four other people or five other people, right? So someone needs a break or has something come up, and you still want to play the show. So who do you call?
Right.
Somebody, me, right?
Or Ghostbusters, one of the two.
Or Ghostbusters, yeah, I'm down with that.
Now, of all the times you've been called in to sub in for a band, what is, to your memory, the hardest song that someone's thrown at you to learn?
It's funny. I actually know. I got called in to play bass, funny enough, with this reggae band. And I am, without a doubt, probably the whitest bass player going. And I mean that with all due respect.
You remember who you're talking to, right?
Yeah. And their set list was so awesome because I loved the music, and most of the songs I knew. There were some key things I had, like key changes I had to work out, but I didn't realize, like in a reggae band, the songs are really around the bass player, not the guitar player, as they would be in a rock band. So in a rock band, it's very guitar centric, and in a reggae band, it's very bass centric. It's the bass and drums that carry everything. And I didn't realize until I got to the gig that, like, oh God, I might be fucked. Like this might not have been a good idea. And they were really leaning on me to lead the songs, and I wasn't overly prepared to do that. Usually somebody else in the band will lead the songs, and I can kind of really ghost along if I'm not sure on something. So it was a little daunting. The song in question was Master Blaster by Stevie Wonder. So this band called me up 24 hours before the gig. They called me on a Thursday for a Friday night gig. Most of the set list I was fine with. Master Blaster, I first of all had never heard the song. So it was a Stevie Wonder song that I had never heard. And if you've never heard it, people out there, go take a listen. And it's just like the ultimate bass line and intertwining bass lines and just a lot of stuff happening. And I actually had a hard time with it. Like, I was like, oh my God, this song's making me sweat. And so funny enough, I charted it out and got it going and went to the gig, and that was their encore song. Right. So we finished the gig, and, they're kind of like egging on the crowd for an encore. And the drummer says to me, he goes, oh, we'll do some other song, because he realized how hard Master Blaster was. And I said, no. I said, I spent like the last 24 hours learning this goddamn song. We're playing this damn song. And he went, all right, man. And then, and we tore through the song, and it was a lot of fun, but it was the hardest song by far I've ever had to learn on the fly like that quickly. It was not. I probably needed 2 months with that song to feel comfortable with it.
There's a song out there called the 4-Chord Song by the Axis of Awesome.
Yeah,
don't know. Yeah. How much now do you kind of like associate with that song, as well as knowing that a lot of, popular songs on the radio kind of fit that 4-chord structure?
Yeah. It's unfortunately where music's at, and also fortunately where music's at. I mean, that's the math of music, right? So when you see that shtick with the Axis of Awesome, it is amazing that that's all those hits, right? That's just a reality. But music's done that for a long time. I think that the cool part about the eclectic nature of what I have done musically in my life is that I can veer off of that very easily, where there's a lot of people who can't, right? They hear music and it's very much those main notes of the major scale, and they don't deviate from that, and anything that's atonal or is weird is too jazzy or metal, or and they just wouldn't go there, where my brain's like, that sounds mean and ugly, let's go there. So when I'm writing with other people, though, I have to really kind of hone that in, and I often have talks with the artist I'm working with or whatever, and kind of get an idea of what they're trying to do, because the last thing you want to do is have a big metal breakdown in the middle of a pop song just because you think it's fun to put it in there, right? So you have to serve the song. I tell my students, always serve the song, but sometimes these songs are a very basic DCG, which we know has covered every major hit ever. So that's just real.
By the way, if our listeners haven't heard the 4-Chord Song by the Axis of Awesome, go listen to it, and you will never listen to the radio the same way again. Yep. Considering everything you've done so far in your career, which movie would you associate more with? Hired Guns, the documentary, or Spinal Tap?
Both incredible movies. I actually just watched Spinal Tap last week again, and had a good laugh because I saw something new in it that I hadn't seen before. I probably associate more with Hired Guns. When that movie came out, it was like I literally pushed it to all my students and all my friends and said, like, this is reality. For the working musician, it's a very real thing. I think there was a lot of cool moments in that movie, but the part with Stevie Wonder again, with his drummer, who's like, when Stevie's not touring, I go back to playing bars for $100 a gig. Like, when he said that, I was like, yep. That's really the nature of the beast, right? Like, you could be the greatest guitar player in the world and it does not matter, right? On that level, unless you are the artist, you're just a hired gun. You're just filling a shoe. And, sometimes filling that shoe is strumming a DCG and being the axis of awesome, right? So, and other times, yeah, they're relying on you to just be perfect at all times. That's a daunting task. I've had my share of Spinal Tap moments, but I relate more to that hired gun scenario for sure.
I love that you kind of brought up the Stevie Wonder's drummer playing for $100 a night, because any musician that's played, the bar scene and the cover scene and whatnot, $100 a night is almost like you might as well just get that written on a shirt, because that's kind of like the mantra of the game. But now we're coming off of a time where, in Canada, it's probably going to have been a year and a half by the time we finally get, bands back inside bars. Is this a chance for, like the bar band industry to kind of move past that $100 a night, or do you just see it going the opposite direction where, it's going to be almost like scramble to the bottom?
Yeah, that race to the bottom is something I fear. The problem with musicians in this day and age, in my opinion, of course, but my biggest issue with it is there is no hierarchy anymore. There was a time when, in order to play certain clubs, you had to try out and you had to get past certain promoters who booked those clubs or bar owners. And it wasn't assumed that just because you own a guitar that you are now a musician, right? And unfortunately, we are in those times. Anybody can go buy an instrument that they like, go on YouTube, learn something, and then say, I can book myself at my local bar and I will fill that bar because I've never played before and all my friends want to see me play. And I'll play for free and the bar will go great. And they will go in there and they will do what they do, whether it's good or bad. They'll do what they do and the bar will be filled. And the bar will say, this is great. This cost me little to no money and the place was full. Where a band that plays regularly and does this as a business is going, well, you just completely destroyed the business model for me, right? So the weekend warrior who, plays once every 6 months with his buddies, and is willing to do it for nothing, they're the ones who are making that $100 gig so tough for us to maintain, let alone ask for more. Right. So there are places to play where you can get more, and there's other places in the world which respect the cover musician. Ontario is a tricky one. I've had some really good rooms I played that, paid well, and then I've had some really awful places that wanted to pay nothing. Right. And the whole pay to play thing, but again, that's the cover scene, right? And it's a tricky one. It's not for the faint of heart. That's for sure.
You've played the cover scene.
Yeah.
You've played the original scene, and you've had a chance to actually open up for some really big shows. Which did you find more satisfying as a musician? That's a good question. I think I got a chance to open up for Colin James at Kapuskasing Arena a bunch of years back, and it was fascinating on a couple levels because he's a monster guitar player. Like, love or hate him, his talent is just unreal. So like, to watch him in soundcheck was really cool for me. I got to nerd out and be like guitar geek with him. So yeah, that was a lot of fun, and to play in front of his crowd, in an arena atmosphere was very cool for me. Right, I've never played an actual hockey arena, even though it was Kapuskasing. It was a real hockey arena, and there was 3,000 people there. So like that was very, very neat. So yeah, I would say that moment really stands out to me. I've opened for some cool people.
he was one, and the other one was probably Skid Row with King's X back in the day, and I got to open for them, and just the professionalism, especially out of King's X, it was shocking, like just how much they knew their craft, and made me feel like I knew nothing, because I didn't. I thought I knew something. I knew nothing before that show, and was very awakened as to what you're supposed to do as a professional musician. So,
for someone who's sitting there at home for the past year, said, you know what, I'm not not going anywhere, might as well learn a guitar, and then they start to get the idea of like, well, I'm going to put a band together, and we're going to play the bars and it'll be fine and all that. What are some of the misconceptions that a new band trying to get out there probably have, and should be disillusioned of very quickly?
That people will care, first of all. Like, a lot of times you will design your set list and you'll put like all this monster heavy stuff up front, thinking it's going to make people dance, and you realize that when you actually start playing that the bar is half full or not full at all. And it's like, oh, these songs were misplaced in the set, right? So that's one of the first things, I try to show the bands I consult with, is that you need to sometimes roll with the punches and have really clear understanding of the room you're playing and what time it actually fills. So like you can understand this one playing, what's that place in Oshawa we played before?
Oshawa.
The
Tap and Tankard.
Tap and Tankard. So like that place, usually the first set is kind of dead, and then, after that 45-minute break between sets, the second set is a lot more full, and the third set is usually bonkers, right? So you plan accordingly in that one. And I've seen other rooms do it in the complete reverse, where the first set is insane and then it dies out, and like all of a sudden you're like, all of these big rock anthems you thought you were going to pump onto a hungry crowd, there's no one there, right? So I've seen both sides of that coin, and so that disillusion part, being prepared for that inevitability is tricky. Also knowing your own gear and knowing how to troubleshoot it, right? So a lot of people don't practice setting up their PA, right? And it's something I did from a young age, and still to now. Like, I can set up a PA so bloody quick, depending on time limits, and getting the show going, where I've watched other bands and it's like they have to show up like 6 hours before a show to set up the PA. And I'm like, okay, you need to be quicker and better at that, especially the teardown at the end of the night when the bar wants to go home, right? So last thing you want to be known as is that band that takes 6 hours to also tear down their gear and get out of the bar, right? So, these things matter, and because you probably don't have people helping you and you don't have a sound guy, you got to be able to set it all up and make it sound good like that, right? And that's daunting. A lot of people just are not aware of that when they get into this game, right? I've had students, unfortunately it's my fault, I've had my younger students show up and be like, they got so used to me setting up their gear that they're like, what do you mean I have to do this by myself? I said, yeah, you're at it, you're a big boy now, you got to kind of go do it on your own now. So, yeah, it's a tricky one.
When it comes to putting a set together, for one of those, 3 45-minute set kind of nights, when you're picking the songs to put into the set list, how important is it to pick the songs that are going to work? And have you come across songs where you were sure that we're like, oh, this is gonna be great, people are gonna dance, and people are like, yeah, I'm gonna go sit down by the bar here?
Yeah. I've been in this situation too many times. It's a tricky thing to pick the right songs. There are songs that, I always joke about Summer of '69. Every rock band, I think, in Canada plays Summer of '69. Every production company has heard Summer of '69 at every festival. But it works. That song still works. There are hits that will always work. And as you become more experienced playing the bar scene, you understand what works, and you will figure out where to put it appropriately. And sometimes you hold on to them. You'll put them in your back pocket and you'll go, I'll wait till the crowd is at its max and I'll call this out, whether it's on the set list or not. And if you have a good band that's in tune with whoever's leading the show, then you can dive into those things. And I've been lucky to have aligned myself in the past with bands who will either let me MD the band, that's musically directed, for those who don't know, or somebody in the band is a strong MD. So, when they call out that hit, it's like, yeah, you get why it would fit in that moment at that moment. But yeah, I've also played songs. I remember vividly being in Sudbury at the Colson, and I was in a band that routinely learned songs, like the hit song that was out that week on pop radio. We would learn it that night and play it that night, like in our hotel room, unrehearsed, just go and do it. And we learned the song called "Evacuate the Dance Floor" by Cascada. It was a one-hit wonder. It was being pushed all over pop radio, so we learned it. I hated the song, but I was like, it's obviously all over the radio. It's got to be a huge hit. And we played it, and the entire dance floor actually evacuated. Like everyone just left and went to the bar, and I was like, like, oh
don't take
God.
this literally. Don't.
It was nuts, and it was like Summer '69. And we went like, everyone, flooded the scene again, right? So
call the Bryan Adams. We did it all.
Yeah, like it was nuts, right? Then there's other songs, like I remember when that Bruno Mars song.
Locked Out of Heaven?
No, sorry. Locked Out. That was a good one too. That one, yeah, that was an easy one to sell to people. Oh my God, I forget his name now. But he had a big hit, and a buddy of mine was in the States and actually phoned me and said, "This song is so big in the States right now, you guys should learn it because it's going to hit Canada shortly." And we did. We learned the song before it even hit Canadian airwaves. And the week it did, we were the first band playing it on like the cover scene at the time. And we were playing some big clubs. And I remember all our promoters at those clubs were just ecstatic because the song, of course, went over very well. CeeLo Green.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, whatever big hit. I'm blanking on these. I can see the chords in my head, and I can't even think of the song title. but yeah, like stuff like that. Like, so being prepared and doing your homework, is part of it. Like, I don't like listening to terrestrial radio, but I do because I want to see what the radio stations are actually pumping out and what they deem to be the hits that's being rammed down everyone's throat. Right. And again, the people who are listening to this music are probably not musicians, and they love the music because they love the music, and that's fine. But if they're my audience, then I want to tailor to that. Right. It's not like I'm going to go out and play YYZ to open a set. As much as my soul might need that, I have done it to a dance club, and I've watched that way. I've watched that, and then I went right into a Katy Perry song. Right? So,
yeah. Rush to Katy Perry.
Oh, I've done it, man.
I'm trying to picture it.
Oh, it's awful. Yeah, it was done more. That gig was out in Sarnia, and it was done more as there was like one guy in the crowd who was like a Rush fanatic and begged us to play Rush. And I kept telling him, like, nobody here wants to hear Rush. And we opened our third set with YYZ. We just did the beginning, just like the intro. Dan, 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 dan. We did that for a few bars, and then right into like this Katy Perry song. And it was weird because the crowd just went, nah, they just disappeared and then just came right back. It was like such a funny phenomenon of, this music isn't appropriate for this place.
Mm-hmm.
And that happens, right? You have to be really flexible with your music choices.
Now, you mentioned actually listening to, as you put it, terrestrial radio,
yeah.
Which means that, there's the old saying that, when you get to a certain age, I say as my hair gets grayer by the day, when you get to a certain age, the theory is that you stop listening to new music. How often are you still listening to new music? And like, when you hear a song on the radio, what's that indication for you to sit there and say, I better learn this because I know it's going to come up?
Yeah, it's there's a few things I use. One is obviously I will listen and go, that one's catchy and good. And I inherently can listen to a pop song that I know was made with beeps and boops and it doesn't have one real instrument on the track and go, that would be a great rock song. And that being said, a guitar player, drummer, and a bass player, and a vocalist could bring that to life in a rock context in a bar, and it would still sound poppy enough, but with that rock edge that sells. So there's certain songs that I can hear that instantly and go, yep, that's probably one I should learn. Great. Other times I'll rely on I work with a lot of different vocalists, and so they will tell me, like, I love singing this song, right? And I find if the lead vocalist is really into singing a song, then they'll probably perform it well, which means I just have to provide the music around it. So, sometimes that's how I get turned on to, making that song part of our set list, right? So, and the other thing I have going for me, which a lot of players don't, is that I teach music, to students. So I have a lot of younger students who will be like, tell me what the next great hit is, so stuff that I probably wouldn't ever actually lean towards, and they will go, hey, yeah, this is massive at my school right now. Great. Thank you for that information. And I'll go listen and go, well, that's a song. Let's do it. So if I feel it can be done. But again, there's a lot of technology these days being done on Macs that has nothing to do with playing an instrument. So, it's tricky sometimes.
Now, when it comes to actually teaching, what are some of the early things that you encourage in a young musician, and what are some of the things that you very quickly discourage?
I try to discourage attitude as far as bad attitude, right? So some people are naturally just, cup half empty type people, and I've always been, the cups half full type thing. So, if they get down on themselves quickly, it's like you're your biggest detriment to success. Right. So you have to go into this with an attitude of, you're going to suck at this for a bit. This is not going to be good. And if you keep pumping away on it, it's going to get better. It has to. You're not just going to practice 7 days a week and get worse. Like, that's not a thing. But if you don't do anything, you're not going to get better. And that's just a mantra you can apply to anything in life that you do. Right. So with my younger students, I try to just keep their attitude in a positive viewpoint when it comes to music. A lot of our generation and generations before us hated music, hated learning anything, because there was the old wrap the knuckles sort of teaching mentality, which, you'd get arrested if you did that in this day and age. But there are still some teachers who are very old school and are like, do it my way or that's it. And I tend to teach with a customization to the student. So if a student comes into me and says, I love Taylor Swift, I'm like, that's awesome. I'm going to put you on a path to learn Taylor Swift. And along that path, you're going to learn other things. But that's the end goal for now, and eventually as you get towards that goal, you're going to see other goals that you want to achieve, right? So rather than you have to learn these 6 books of stuff that you probably don't care about, and at the end of it, maybe we'll learn something you like, and that's what was originally kind of put on me, was you have to learn all this technique stuff, which was great. Don't get me wrong, because you need to have that as well. But I really feel that playing the instrument is supposed to be fun. So you can convey that information in a fun way and still have them learn their Taylor Swift if they need to, right? So it's a balancing act.
Getting back to gear, we talked about your guitar arsenal. Mm-hmm. What we haven't talked about are the mountains of guitar pedals that I have seen you bring out to even the smallest of shows. Yeah. For anyone who's watching on YouTube right now, there are you have to understand, Leo comes out with like literally 2 racks of guitar pedals for even the shortest set.
Yeah. Why?
Why so many buttons?
Yeah. Well, you know what? For me, there got to a point where I have all these toys, right? And it's like, I want to play with my toys, and when I get to play live, it's like I really try to cover sonically a lot of stuff that maybe the generic guitar player wouldn't. And that's not saying anything bad about it. I've been playing these songs for so long. So if I went back to a Summer of '69, it's like, I've been playing that song for so long that I'm like, what else could I do to that song to bring it to life and to make it more challenging for me on stage to play, right? So yeah, I have all these like synth emulators and different things to just layer my guitar sound and make it thicker and more. I'm a very more is more type of guy. So yeah, that's the reason. I do have a pedal board that's like very simple, that just has basically a tuner and maybe a delay or a boost, and that's it. Like if I had to play a gig with just plugging directly into an amp, I could do that. But yeah, I do like my toys. They're weird and wonderful, and certain toys I find are really needed in what I do now with cover bands, especially when it comes to tunings. So I have certain pedals that allow me to down tune or up tune at a push of a button, rather than trying to switch guitars for those various tunings. So yeah, necessity on some of them.
Now, I'm probably going to be able to guess the answer to this one, but I'm going to ask it anyways.
Yeah.
What is the most obscene pedal?
Yeah, you know what it is.
I know what it is. But there are the uninitiated who are listening to this podcast right now.
All right.
that need to know about this.
Let's initiate them then. I have a pedal on my pedal board that is dumb. I will clearly admit to its dumbness. It is the Chord Miku pedal, Miku, for those who want to look it up. It is, how do I put this? There's apparently a Japanese character, obviously in Japan. She's a hologram cartoon, and she does full hologram concerts over there, and people show up to see this hologram perform. So Korg got it in their brain that they should sample her voice and put it into pedal form so that your guitar would sound like her voice when you play. And it's a really poor concept, but kind of funny. So I saw the pedal years ago at NAMM. Korg was displaying that they're going to make this pedal and sell it, and I instantly ordered it, and it took 8 months to get here from Japan. I forgot that I even bought it. Like, it showed up, and the guys at the store were like, "Hey, Leo, your pedal's here." I'm like, "What pedal?" And and we cracked it open, and we laughed so hard because it has all these vowel settings, and then like literally 3 settings of Japanese gibberish. And where you hit a note and it goes like it makes no sense whatsoever. And I'm like, why would anybody need this? But like, what would you do with this? So I started experimenting with it, and I'm like, yeah, there's certain solos I would do with this thing. So, live, yes, I have. It's on my pedal board. It is a very painful pedal to use live because it doesn't track well, and it has to be first in your chain. Otherwise it just won't work at all. So like it's very temperamental, and there's times I've turned it on and it just doesn't do anything, and you're like stomping on it. So like, but it's apparently worth money now. Like, it's a collector's item because they only made it for that 1 year. But every time I play a gig and there's some guitar guy in the crowd, and he'll come and look at my pedal board and go, "Oh my God, you have the Miku? Like, really, on your pedal board?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "You gonna put it in the song somewhere?" I said, "Yeah, you'll hear it." And there's certain songs I know it works well, and by well, I mean, I think it works well. And then there's other songs where it's like, I shove it in there and people are like, what the fuck was that? But.
Okay. Fun. What to you is a Miku song?
I'll be honest, the one that instantly comes to mind, and you probably played the song at some point in your life as well, Zombie by the Cranberries. So there's that second.
You know what's funny? I've never played that song.
Really?
Never.
Come on, you can handle it.
Oh, I can handle it. I've just never played it.
Oh yeah, I play it like so often. There's so many, especially the female cover or female fronted bands I play in. So, but anyways, there's that simple guitar line that takes you into the verse. Single notes, and because it's slow enough, Miku tracks it okay, and you hear this Japanese voice going wow 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 wow, and it works, but it almost is a detriment because every singer I play it with forgets that it's coming, and then all of a sudden they hear that and they're supposed to start singing right after that, and usually they're laughing too hard, so we have to do another round of the chords. I get to do that line a second time, and let them get their composure. So
when something goes wrong in the middle of a song, how hard is it to kind of get back up there, or just immediately say, okay, let's redo the bridge again and jump back into it?
Oh, like a song as a total, like, so not just my gear, but like the band playing the song.
Yeah, just something goes completely tits up.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing that was kind of driven into me at a young age was don't stop playing. And your face tells the crowd if there's a problem, right? So I have always said I have the best poker face because I'm just smiling all the time. So like, I could be completely fucking up on stage and I'll be laughing through it. It's okay to be self-deprecating as a musician. So if a song is train wrecking for whatever reason, my hope is that if you have a strong drummer, the drummer will keep playing. Everyone else could stop, and as long as there's a solid beat, people will probably still move and just be like, ooh, and you can be like, hey, we're going back to the bridge in 3, 4, and you're back in type thing, right? But that's where it's, all hands on deck. Everyone's got to be doing that nonverbal communication that musicians do on stage. and someone's got to take the lead as well as far as cueing how to get back in and where. And again, it comes back to that MD thing, right? I know in your band, you're primarily the MD. But
those poor suckers.
Yeah, right. But it's good, right? Like somebody has to. I've seen bands where everyone is just doing their own thing and playing at the same time, right? So when there is a train wreck, nobody knows how to recover, right? So as you get stronger as a musician, you have to be aware to look at a situation happening in front of you and go, whoa, I got to pull the reins on this one and drag everyone back in so we know where we are, right? And, it's a learning experience. If the guitar player goes, oh, I messed up. Well, now you just told the crowd that you messed up, right? Most people in the crowd don't know what's really happening, especially if there's, alcohol involved. They'll just keep dancing.
There's never alcohol involved.
Never
alcohol involved. Never.
Attaboy.
He says as he sips a beer.
Attaboy.
And a good strong beer at that too.
Yeah, that's the way it should be.
You've played a number of different instruments in different bands. You have been a lead guitarist, you've been a rhythm guitarist, you've been a bassist, you've been a drummer, you've been a lead singer. When it comes to being the MD of a band, which position do you feel more comfortable being the MD?
Definitely guitar, because that's my first instrument. Weirdly enough, the band I play drums for, I find it odd being the MD from a drummer position. And I'm thankful that because you play bass in that band, that you are taking those reins more and more. Because often I'm doing sound from the drum position as well. So to do sound and try to MD at the same time, sometimes is tricky. So you and I are a good tag team on that front. But guitar, definitely, it's just easier for me from guitar point of view. I know when to drop out, when to come back in, where the harmonies should go and where the band should be. Right. So
now, for those who don't know, Leo and I have known each other for a while. And one of the things that Leo and I have worked on together was this documentary called Unspoken Melody. It was just a short 5-minute documentary. And you can find it on YouTube. I'm actually going to put the link to
awesome.
that in the description on YouTube. So, go watch this on YouTube too after you listen to us on Spotify. But the thing about that documentary was it took 5 musicians. And one of them was Erica Nielsen, who was one of the previous episodes of the podcast. And they had never met. They had never met before that day. And we put them in a room and said, you have to jam, like just original jam for an hour, but you're not allowed to talk, because there's always this unspoken, communication that happens with musicians on stage. How long does it take for you to be able to link in on a band's wavelength? And when you come in as a sub, how difficult is it to jump into that wavelength?
Yeah, that's a great question. Every band is different. I mean, you're dealing with personalities and real human beings here, right? So you can't just say the bass player is going to do the bass thing, right? There's attitude that comes with that. There's personality. There's all that human element. So I will always come in. I don't come in guns blazing. I like to think I don't anyways. Like I come in, I do my job. I often will actually say to a band, like, do you want me to be me, or do you want me to be subdued me? Because I know I can be a little over the top.
Yeah,
like, do you want kazoo solos tonight? Because if you want kazoo solos, I'm your man. But like, if you don't want that because you have a product you're trying to put out to the crowd, then I'm very respectful of that too, and I will just play guitar. So yeah, you're observing personalities on stage in real time, and you need to do what you would do almost like on a job interview, right? Like, so you're trying to be pro, hopefully, and you're doing the right thing. You're playing the song properly, hopefully, and just do the job. And if you think the situation warrants you playing a kazoo solo, then cool. If you think it's going to go over well, but you have to really be aware, right? You can't just be stuck in your own head thinking everybody wants this. Right? They might want, just the job to be done, and that's okay. You just want those 3 chords. I will give you those 3 chords. So,
in Leo Gray's world, what is a good gig?
You get paid. Uh, a good gig. I mean,
more than 3 drink tickets.
Yeah, yeah. If we're talking the cover scene, then all the gear worked, all the sets, like the music went over well, everyone danced, right? Like ultimately, if you can keep people there dancing and buying food and drinks, you've actually done your job. That is the job of a cover band, is to keep people there and keep them dancing, keep them eating and drinking. So if you've done that and the bar is happy at the end of the night, awesome. Then you've done your job, and that's a good gig, right? And you can go home feeling vilified about that. On the original scene, a good gig is when there are people there. So like a lot of cover bands take it for granted that there's going to be people at the bar they're playing. All right. When you're playing an original act, sometimes you'll play a venue and there's nobody there. Like I'm assuming you've been in this situation, but I have played to just the sound guy, right? Like to just the sound guy. And then the next band has come in and they play to just the sound guy. So like it can be hard as an original act, so from an original point of view, playing in front of people who seem to really want you to be there, right? So that's a good gig as well.
Oh, I've played a cover gig where the only person left was the bartender. They sent the kitchen staff home. That's how bad it was.
Oh yeah, buddy, I've been there. That's good.
It was to the point we got to third set. It's like, so what do you want to hear? Because you're the only person here, like physically the only person here. When you get to play a show and you're the one who gets to pick the songs, right? Let's give you a dream stereo here. You got a 3-song section in a set, and the crowd's going to love it no matter what the hell you play. So what songs would you put in that 3-song set to make you happy?
Oh, to make me happy. Oh, man.
This is we're going to please Leo Gray.
Oh,
3-song set.
I don't know. You know what? I get so detached sometimes because I truly just love playing. So I stopped thinking about the specific song and like whether I enjoy it. The one song that instantly comes to mind is Sir Duke by Stevie Wonder, funny enough again. I learned all those horn lines on guitar, and it's like one of those songs, like if the bass player knows it and you're locked in on that song, it's a really cool show off piece. It's a funky tune. People usually dance to it. You can't hide behind distortion in that one. So there's some technical stuff that as me as a guitar player, I'm like, this is fun to play, and just always goes over well. So like Sir Duke would be probably one of them. I mean, anything rock or metal would make me happy, but it just never really tends to happen in a cover scene, right? Although I always love doing, I did it with your band too, the Bloodhound Gang song.
Oh yeah, the Bad
right?
Touch.
Like, it's such an easy tune, but I don't know why it makes me so happy to play that song. I love one-hit wonders, so I know in like my solo acoustic show, I do like a whole one-hit wonder set because they're just fun tunes, right? And there's a reason, like Teenage Dirtbag by Wheatus. Like I absolutely love that song. I don't know why, I just do, So yeah,
I can't picture people at a bar dancing to that song, but
I've subbed in some cover bands that had it in their set list. I was like, really? Teenage Dirtbag, alrighty.
I can see that being third set, end of the night, everyone's drunk, so people are like, oh, hey, that song.
Totally.
But now we get to the point, Leo, where we come to the ultimate question of the podcast. So if you, Mr. Leo Gray, had to introduce yourself to a total stranger by handing them a mixtape, but on that mixtape are songs that tell the story of you. What songs are on that tape and why are they there?
Okay, all right. I actually made a list.
I gave you homework.
You gave me homework, god damn it. All right, so it's kind of chronological order. So for those of you who don't know me, I immigrated to Canada back in the early 80s from Russia, and my first musical memory, like I was, I think 3 years old, the first musical memory I have is Pink Floyd, and the Wall album specifically, but the song In the Flesh, which opens that album, like every time I hear it, I still get goosebumps. It's like, it takes me back to being in a crib and like looking out a window at Bathurst and Finch in Toronto. Like that's my earliest musical memory. And yeah, that album is just amazing to me. It's like concept albums, which are just unheard of in this day and age. It's just still such a cool thing. And The Wall by Pink Floyd, specifically In the Flesh, very cool tune. Which takes me to another song from my youth, Goodbye Stranger by Supertramp.
Okay.
Again, just something about it when I was young. My parents, constantly played, like, like typical parents of that era, what they were listening to, right? So I just have very fond memories of that song and being super young. And then I remember getting a little bit older, and a guy on my hockey team gave me Def Leppard's Hysteria, and like the song Rocket, which I think opens the album. Uh, I was just like blown away. Like, I was just like, what is this? I'd spent so long listening to AM radio with my dad that I just had no concept that something could sound like that. Right. So that album was very, very cool for me. The first album I ever owned was in kindergarten, funny enough, at Bathurst and Finch, and it was Michael Jackson's Thriller album. I remember my parents buying it for me on a cassette, and I was so happy because I thought he was so cool. And we went to theaters to see the Thriller music video because you could only see it in theaters at the time because it was so long, right? It was like a mini movie. So "Want to Be Starting Something" by Michael Jackson. Oh, that song just always gets me. It's so good. This was more on my dad's side, but when I started playing guitar, I remember vividly my dad putting a guitar in my hands. I was 5 years old. He's like, "You're going to be Elvis and I'm going to be the Colonel." And I remember him saying that to me, and I had no idea what that meant. But he started playing Elvis for me. So "Suspicious Minds" by Elvis would be on my mixtape. He also introduced me to Buddy Holly, who would arguably be probably the best guitar player of his era. Had he, well, he was damn good, but had he lived, he probably would have done some amazing musical things. So "That'll Be the Day" by Buddy Holly is a big one for me as well. And then I met some friends. As you get into those fun years, you grow up, and I had a buddy who played guitar, and he started showing me some things. And one of the things he showed me was Metallica. And I remember bringing in the song called "One" by Metallica, and I was just like, again, like, what the fuck is that? That is the coolest thing ever. And I remember learning the intro to "One" and learning about down picking and palm muting, and like, wow, that is killer. So, and Metallica was like, for especially as a metalhead, it was like the foundation for what happened after that, and joining bands, and wanting to be heavier than everyone else, and all that fun stuff. Which led me into Guns N' Roses. Paradise City by Guns N' Roses, the whole Appetite for Destruction album actually, but I'll pick Paradise City, just an anthemic song. And funny enough, the song that GNR tends to end their shows with, because it's so anthemic, right? Like, we would all kill to write a song as anthemic as Paradise City, with as cheesy of a chorus as that one is, right? So, and then the same friend who kind of got me into guitar playing introduced me to punk rock, and introduced me to a band called Dayglow Abortions. And "Proud to Be a Canadian" by Dayglow Abortions was like the first power chord song I ever learned, and was like, oh, you can move the shape and add distortion, and it sounds really cool. And I went into this like slight punk rock phase because of Dayglow Abortions. So, don't worry, we're almost done. Gwar was "Sick of You" by Gwar.
Such a good song.
Oh, it's so damn good. And I've seen Gwar live so many times. And, rest in peace, Odorous. But man, my God, the shows they put on were unreal. That style of metal was like just fantastic to me. I just thought it was really cool. And visually, the show, right? Like, you see a show like Gwar, you don't go on after Gwar. You don't want to follow that up. That's just craziness. They were just so good. And I wish people could experience it, because it's one hell of a show.
That whole Scumdogs of the Universe album was just such an enjoyable, because there's for a band that was such a show band, there's a lot of technical merit in that album.
In that album, and I still have that cassette. Like, I have that cassette somewhere around here, and it's like, it's so good. Like, that album is just fantastic. So, yeah, Gwar was a big part of me. And then in the 90s, I really got into Pantera, and like Dimebag Darrell for me was like that next level of guitar, but probably the way like Eddie Van Halen was to guys in the late 70s and 80s. Discovering Dimebag and Pantera, and just the sheer level of heaviness that I thought Metallica had, but then these guys just kind of eclipsed it. And still had the groove, and their live show was still on point and just unreal. And I mean, they were, I remember vividly seeing them in Cops Coliseum in Hamilton. And they came out, and Metallica had just released their Load and Reload albums when they cut their hair and put on makeup and stuff in the late '90s. And Pantera came out, and actually the first words out of the lead singer's mouth was, "We want to thank Metallica. We're the new kings of metal." And it then just obliterated the stage. Like, it was just like just an hour and a half of just metal mayhem. And I was like, yeah, you guys are the heaviest thing ever. And Dimebag was just, for me, just like that next level of guitar player, right? Where everyone else was so busy shredding, he could do all that, but also showboat, which I really, really dug. So, and the last song, which has nothing to do with any of those songs, In Your Eyes by Peter Gabriel. I don't know why, but that song just does it for me. And it's just part of my DNA. And it's just worldly. It's just a super strong, great song. If I could write any song in the world, I'd probably want to write that song. So that would be my mixtape.
And that song is so good live. I remember the when Peter Gabriel did the Secret World tour, and he had Paula Cole as the backup singer. Yes. And it was just this, it's that moment. And even if you're not as familiar with the song as a musician might be, just go watch the movie Say Anything. Like, like that song made that movie. I mean, without that song, I think, and that scene where like John Cusack is like holding up the ghetto blaster and playing that song, I don't think that movie achieves the status that it has without literally that one scene and that one song.
Power of music, man, right? Like, it's just like it's a monumental tune, and matched with the right film, it's just like, that's a moment, right? It's a moment you can't capture anywhere else.
You mentioned how much Dimebag was a huge influence on you. How much did his passing kind of hit you?
I mean, as with any person who, you look up to somebody that you never met, and you're like, oh, problem with Dimebag was he's one of the only people to have died on stage in that fashion. Part of me was like, if I ever was going to go, I want to go on stage. I don't know if I want to go in the fashion he did, but he was still there was still so much in there, and he had still so much to give, and you're taken before your time, and it's just so sad. But I also got to meet him once, and I think I had this more human connection to my idol because I met him once, and the way I met him was the funniest thing. I was at a Pantera show at the Warehouse in Toronto back when that existed, and it was Pantera, Anthrax, and Cold Chamber. I think it was '97.
Damn good show.
Really cool show. And Anthrax was on, and I was standing, there's a pit, and I was standing just outside the pit, and I turned like this, and 5 feet from me was Dimebag. He was just standing there, and I was just like, like, what the fuck is that? And at first I thought it was just somebody dressed as Dime, right? But that pink goatee, like, it stands out, right? And behind him was Big Val, his security guard, who was like 7 feet tall and just the monster. And I just ran up and like, Dime? And he's like, hey man, how's it going? He's like, just that Texas drawl, and he just started throwing guitar picks at me. And by then everyone was like swarming him. And I was like, oh my God. And he's like, all right, well, I gotta get going. I gotta get ready for the show. And he disappeared with Big Val. And 45 minutes later, he was on stage in front of me, right? And I still have that guitar pick. And the guitar pick had a 1-800 number on it and said, call me. And you could call it. And sometimes he picked up. And other times it just went to his voicemail. And I'm like, what? Who does that? Like, what kind of superstar does? But he never saw himself as a superstar. And I think that's why I really loved him. He was self-deprecating, but he had the goods. The man could play. He always put on a perfect show. Like, I never seen a guy not make a mistake, and he was one of those guys. He was just perfection personified. Could drink like a motherfucker, and still do it. And a lot of people try to do that, and you just can't. He naturally was that. He wasn't trying to do it. He just was that. So it hit me when he left us, and but like with all our heroes, at least we have the music, and I'm thankful for that.
As we get closer to that new normal, what's something you would say to musicians who are looking to get back at it, and what's something you would say to the lovers of live music who have been without that which kind of drives them for the past year?
Yeah, well, I'll start with the lovers of music. We need to go back out and support not only the businesses but the bands and stuff. Like, we always lean on music to kind of bring us out of our funk when, we are hit hard with something. And I mean, this has hit the world hard. So, as much as music will be the last thing to open up, it's going to be the first thing everybody wants. So I'm hoping everyone goes out and supports and be safe about it. Obviously, do what has to be done, but go out and support the bands. And as far as the bands are concerned, I know we're all itching. All the players are itching to get back at it, and I hope everyone's been practicing and playing or something.
We're supposed to practice?
Maybe. Yeah, no, I mean, there's going to be some rust, but I think we do something that is different from other people. It's not pushing play on a Mac, and it's like, this is a real functional thing, and it's organic, and I think people, after being locked up for so long, are going to miss that. So I hope the musicians treat it with a grain of respect as well, and don't just assume that everyone's going to be there, but love everyone who will be there. So I'm looking forward to it, man. I'm so stoked to get back out there. It feels so weird not being in front of people and doing this, but gotta do what you gotta do.
Leo, thanks so much for popping on the show. Where can we find you in social media, and how can we listen to anything that you have put out there?
Social media. I mean, I'm on Facebook under Leo Gray, I guess. Instagram, I'm No Neck Leo, because apparently I don't have a neck, so No Neck Leo.
Yeah, this isn't digital, reproduction. He actually has no neck. I did put a squish filter on him.
Yeah, at No Neck Leo is my Instagram handle. And music. I mean, I've been in so many different things. I mean, my old metal days. There's a band called Ground Level that I was in for nearly a decade, and our one and only album is on YouTube if you want to go see it. Ground Level Music, I believe it would be under. There's a slew of other stuff, but I'd start there. That's a good start. That would actually put money in my pocket.
Okay, so now you know what to do. Let's get Leo paid.
Yeah. We like that stuff.
All right. Thank you to everyone for listening into this episode of the Made You a Mixtape podcast. A reminder that if you're watching this on YouTube, and watch me have a sip of beer on YouTube, so why not? We're on all the audio streaming platforms, so you can download this on the go. But if you're listening to us on any of the audio streaming platforms, you can go watch this entire episode on YouTube in its entirety and grab a ruler and measure for yourself how little of a neck Leo actually has. This has been the Made You a Mixtape podcast. I'm Jason. We will see you next time.